All the roll and go, where am I to go? Meet Johnny, where am I to go? For I'm a young and a sailor lad, and where am I to go?
Hello and welcome to Where Am I to Go podcast. Today we are in Butte and we are at the Mai Wah Museum, Mai Wah. I mispronounced it. We are here with Dave, and Dave is going to take us through this museum, explain to us what it's all about, and there is some history here that I am not really knowledgeable about, but I am excited to learn. So welcome to Where Am I to Go podcast, Dave.
All right, welcome. We'll start with the mercantile.
Okay, let's start with your name first.
Oh, Dave Stonehawker?
No, the name of the museum. Dave Stonehawker works too.
That's me. Anyway, no, so it's the Mai Wah Museum and the Wah Chong Tai Mercantile. They're two separate buildings that were owned by the same family, the Chen family. They came to the U.S. in the mid-1880s, established a mercantile up the street from us that was so successful. It was a very small building that they built the Wah Chong Tai Mercantile, which we'll see here in just a few minutes.
Okay.
It's really a interesting exhibit that we have there, and so I'll take you through the whole place.
But Mai Wah, what does that mean?
It means beautiful China.
Beautiful China. Okay.
Yep.
And now this family that was selling in the mercantile, did they mostly sell to the Chinese population here, or did they sell to everybody?
They sold to everybody, but there was the largest Asian population were the Chinese. There were Koreans and Japanese here as well, smaller populations. And I'll explain more detail when we get into the mercantile, how it functioned. It was a multifunctional facility besides just a mercantile.
Okay, well, let's go look.
Let's take a look.
Now, your museum's really easy to find. With Google, we didn't have a problem getting here at all, and your front display is nice, and wow, the mercantile is awesome. You've got all these glass cases in here that have different merchandise items. You've got a lot of crocks, a lot of bags with the Chinese writing on them, boxes, cigar type boxes.
Those are
writing.
Herbs and different things the Chinese used to cook with. So the primary function of the mercantile was providing the Chinese with traditional cookware. There's woks, things like that. Chinese herbs, dried goods, as in fish, dried fish and things like that. That was the primary function of the mercantile, was provide those goods and services to the Chinese and the Asian community. Also, it was a hub of the Asian community, the Chinese primarily. Legal services, banking services, translation services. The Qin family who owned this were very well educated. Most of the Chinese that came did not speak a lot of English, so they were kind of their source of survival for those crucial things in life, you know. The things that you see in the mercantile are original to the mercantile. It actually closed in 1943. The parents of the Chen family were elderly. The boys had gone off to war. The girls had gotten married and moved away. And so when they closed it up, they pretty much left things here.
Really?
And so we have reset up the mercantile to the way it was in 1905. There's a great display over here that shows 1905 and how the mercantile looked.
Okay, now I've got a couple of questions.
Okay.
They brought dried herbs, then the dried fish, and all of that kind of stuff. Did they import that straight from China?
Actually, it went through. So the Wah Chong Tai company was based in Seattle. So this was kind of a franchise mercantile. So those things would come into Seattle and then were shipped here to Butte via wagon train, however they could get them here, and then distributed out of the mercantile.
Okay, so there were lots of different Chinese stores throughout the region, or?
In Butte?
No, I'm not just talking Butte. If they had their main distribution center in Seattle, then there must have been several different locations as you're coming on across. And I know that the Chinese were big working on the railroad and some of those types of things. Did they have outposts all the way here to operate the franchise? Or
not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
I think this, to me, my understanding is this was the only satellite Wah Chong Tai company location.
Really?
There may have been other companies that were doing similar things, but that was the big one in Seattle at the time.
Okay, and then Seattle would ship it out to here.
Would ship it to us here in Butte.
Wow.
So
That's a long ride to, back in 1850s, 1860s. That was pre-locomotive, wasn't it?
well, the Chen family moved here in the mid around 1880.
Okay.
So yeah, so that was, well, they were building the railroads at the time, so a lot of things came by wagon train. As the rails were developed, then things came by steam engine.
Well, I'm just thinking that's a long trip from Seattle
It
to
is.
here.
It still
And-
is. It's a 10-hour drive.
Right, yeah.
You know?
And so it had to have been probably a 5 or 6 day, or maybe
Adventure,
even longer,
yeah.
to bring the merchandise here.
Yep.
And it would have been a very specialty merchandise with the Chinese population or whatever. It wouldn't have been, yeah.
So one of the coolest things in our herbal display here is the shark fin. Shark fins were outlawed a long time ago
Right.
for shark fin soup, but we actually have a shark fin.
You do.
Yep.
You've got all kinds of stuff in this cabinet. And
Yep.
with look, that must be a tea. It says jasmine
Yep.
tea.
Yep. Jasmine teas,
Lock-on
there's teas,
tea.
herbs,
Wow.
lots of dried goods. Over here in this display, there's a lot of dried fish, dried squid, dried fish, water chestnuts, different things like that.
And all in the Chinese wicker baskets. And now, what are these? Those look like claws.
Uh,
A water caltrop seed.
yeah.
It's an edible seed. It looks kind of like a bear claw.
Yeah, it does.
Huh.
Or an eagle's talon or something like that.
Yeah. That's really interesting. Then you got a lot of crocks up here.
And a lot of tinware that things were shipped in.
And this is really cool that you still have the original display cases to show this stuff off.
Yeah, there's some Chinese toys. In fact, we're opening next summer a new exhibit, a Chinese toy exhibit. The Chen family descendants have given us some traditional Chinese toys that the young Chen kids played with when they were around 1900. So
Really?
we have that. We're going to open that next summer.
Now, are the Chens still around here? Or
They're
are they-
not.
Okay.
They're primarily on the east and west coast.
Okay.
Like I said, they were very well educated when they came. They educated their kids. They ended up being doctors, lawyers, university professors. They were a pretty well-established family. In 2014, they had a family reunion here in Butte at the Mercantile, which was really fun. There was about 20 of them that came.
Oh, really?
And these were all that would be grandchildren, great-grandchildren of the original
Wow.
family.
How cool is that?
Yeah, very
And
cool.
then you've got over here in this display.
Those are wedding ceremony wall decorations and different things for wedding ceremonies.
And what's in the box? He's got a box here that's about 2 foot long, and
It's a storage
12
case.
inches wide.
It's a storage box for the
for the
wall displays.
Okay. That is cool. That's in a really cool glass case also.
And these are some cabbage cutters and stone grinders and things. I'll talk more about that when we get to the.
Okay, because I've never seen cabbage cutters that look like this.
Yep, you throw
It
your
looks
cabbage-
kind of like the front of an old Indian canoe that's about 2 foot long and about 8 inches wide and has a metal wheel in the middle with
to
a
chop.
handle to chop the.
Yep, for chopping.
That is really neat. And so the Chinese that were here, what did they primarily do? Were they working in the mines or?
No, because the Exclusion Act forbidden them to own mineral rights and to work in the mines. And so they were providing goods and services to the community. Laundry services. I'm actually in a current research project to name all the laundries and the mercantiles that were in Butte around 1900. Hopefully I'll have that done here in the next year. It's a huge project. I have old insurance fire maps of the city from 1890 until the 1930s. And so I'm identifying and locating where those properties were, those laundries and those mercantiles. So this is a cool display picture here. It shows the mercantile in 1905.
Doesn't look much different than what it does right now.
No, it's very, very close. There's a few things that are different with some pieces missing and a display case missing, but I'd say 80% of this is how it was in 1905.
And they just left. They just closed the doors and left it.
Yep.
Wow, that's cool when you're able to find something like that.
Yeah, it really is.
That is so neat. And then you have the picture showing what it exactly looked like. Okay, so now is this all the bigger the Mercantile was, or did they have back areas also that are part of the museum now? Or?
Actually, so this building, the Wah Chong Tai Mercantile, was built in 1899. Because of the success of the smaller Mercantile, they expanded. In 1909, the Mai Wah building, which is right adjacent to us, was built to triple the size of the Mercantile.
Okay.
And the Noodle Parlor that's on the top floor. And it was fully operational until 1943. It was one of 9 noodle parlors that was in Butte at the time.
Oh, really?
There is one left, the Peking, which is across the alley from us, just around the corner. It is the oldest noodle parlor in the United States, owned by the same family.
Really?
They've been on the NBC Today show. They've been.
And where's this at? Just around the corner from
Yeah,
you?
just up the alley here.
Really?
Yeah.
I might have to go get a noodle just to say
75
I ate
feet.
there.
Yeah, yeah. And actually, I eat there a couple times a month. It's really good.
Huh.
The gentleman who runs it does a really good job.
Well, that's cool, and it's still the same family that was running it
Yeah,
50 years ago.
His menu has a really interesting history of chop suey and the development of chop suey, which is not a traditional Chinese dish.
Okay.
Chop suey kind of means garbage, whatever they had left, and that story starts with the miners coming in the middle of the night, hungry, and they ran 24/7, and they were out of food. They just started throwing stuff together to make vegetables and whatever they had to feed these miners, and that's where chop suey came from.
And so it came from like Butte is
Yep.
where chop suey, the name and all that originated.
Yep.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. So how many Chinese were in Butte?
I get asked that question a lot. It's really hard to tell because the Chinese didn't report to when the census takers came
Okay.
around. Most of them are probably not legally here, so therefore they kind of hid from the census takers. The best estimate we have is a report for the state of Montana, which is about 2,000 Chinese. We imagine of those 2,000, probably 1,100 to 1,200 were actually here in Butte.
That was when Butte had a population of 100,000
of
people.
100,000 people.
So they were really a small minority.
They were, but
Yeah.
they were a vital part of the community
Yeah.
as well.
Well, yeah,
providing
the services that they were providing.
Yep.
And how come it is that the Chinese are so well known for laundry? Why is laundry their you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's one of those things that if you ever go to any town and you ask about the Chinese population that was there in the beginning, it's always laundry.
That I don't know why, but they were pretty innovative, and it was a service that they knew the community needed.
Okay.
These are my assumptions.
Right.
And so that was something they could do to provide a service and make some money to the communities that they were in. I don't know if that's fact or not.
Well,
but,
I don't either. It's just
you know.
it just seems like that's kind of the business that you always associate
Right.
with the early Chinese.
Right. Well, and noodle parlors and mercantiles, they're providing services to the community. Opium shops.
He grins every time we mention the word opium. Okay, explain opium to me. Because you've got a different take on this than what I've heard in other places.
It's not a prominent part of the Butte Chinese history.
Okay.
I'm not saying there weren't opium dens. I know there were. Actually, the red light district, the prostitutes were just a block east of us here, and all the brothels were there, and that's where a lot of the opium and the consumption of that took place. The Chen family wasn't a provider of that to the community. That was not their focus. But there were other Chinese identities in Butte as well that probably brought those products here.
Well, and the reason I mention that is we did a podcast at Pendleton, Oregon. Mm-hmm. They had the Pendleton Underground tour that we went on, and on the underground is where the Chinese had their laundries and several different businesses, along with many other people. Mm-hmm. But they were saying that there was a big opium problem in China, which is what caused a lot of the migration to America.
And that's what the Chens were running from.
That's what they were running from.
Their region of China, the Guangzhou region where they came from, government corruption, poverty, the opium wars were going on at the time. They were taking their families elsewhere to raise them for safety and security.
And that's kind of what they said at Pendleton. But then they said that as they came over, opium became part of their life also, a lot of them. And they said that there was a real opium problem, that epidemic or whatever you want to call it, that came to that town.
Right.
And so that's my little bit of reference that I've got, other than, history mentions opium and the Chinese kind of hand in hand sometimes. And that's the reason I'm asking for the alternate opinion, is because...
that wasn't the focus of the Chen family.
Well, okay.
It was the mercantile and, and other services.
But I just, I don't know how prevalent it really was, or if that's just a fallacy.
I don't know, because I wasn't here.
Me neither. We're just looking back.
We're just looking back, And you go through records, and there are... the Butte Silver Belt Archives is a wonderful organization. They built a brand new building. It has preservation like the Smithsonian with climate-controlled vaults and things for papers and stuff. And when you look back, there are news articles of opium incidents in Butte and so forth.
Well, and I'm sure if there was drugs, it wasn't just the Chinese that were... opium, I'm sure, was a problem all over the place. Yeah. Not just in the Chinese.
It's like,
anyway. Okay, so let's look some more.
Yeah, let's go up the stairs here. We'll go all the way up to the top floor to where the noodle parlor was.
Okay. Wow, this is a set of stairs.
It's a set of stairs, and be careful. They're old. Don't fall.
Now, is all of this open to the public as far as the noodle factory and all of that?
Yes.
Okay.
We'll talk about that in a second. So the Peking is 2 buildings up out that window.
Okay. And as we get upstairs, we've still got the old original linoleum on the floor.
Yes, and different kinds of linoleum in different spots,
You can see that there was many different trends or remodels or whatever in here.
Yeah. So this room is really a history room of the Chen family and their migration from China, where they came from, their immigration papers, pictures of the family from the early 1900s, information on an herbalist, Dr. Huey Pak, Dr. Wan Jin Lam.
And now, did they practice traditional Chinese medicine as far as acupuncture and that type of stuff?
I don't know about acupuncture, but they were herbalists.
Okay.
And so herbal medicine.
And they were able to get all of that from the Seattle distribution for all of their medications and stuff?
Yep.
Wow. That's just amazing. And so they had 2 doctors here.
Oh, there were probably more than 2. Those are the 2 famous ones. In fact, I know there were more. I was talking to a gentleman who lives in Utah this summer. Let me get this right, great-great-grandfather had a laundry, 304 South Arizona Street.
Okay.
Then his grandfather was a trained herbalist.
Okay.
Different name than Dr. Pak and Dr. Lam. And so that's what has inspired me to look into mercantiles and herbal shops and laundries, and starting this project to identify locations where they were and who they belonged to.
Okay.
It's been an interesting process. I've really discovered some cool facts about Butte. Side facts about Butte, not so much Chinese history, but other things that were going on at the time in my research. So
I'm sure Butte's a cool old place.
Oh, it is. It really is.
I have enjoyed driving around and looking at the architecture and some of that.
Yeah, it's the largest historical district in the United States, the Uptown area that we're in right now.
Okay, and in this room, he's got several, 8 different placards that are about 7 foot tall and have pictures of the Chin family, pictures of their immigration papers. He's got the Huey family and Wah Chong Tai, the 2 doctors.
Yep, Dr. Lam.
And
we have the family tree
about them
of the original Chins.
Okay, and is that the family reunion picture?
That is.
Okay.
Yep, 2014.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it covers the whole Chin kind of history in brief.
Yep. to
now,
current.
These doctors, were they primarily just Chinese practitioners, or did they work on some of the other people in the Butte area also? Because Chinese medicine's pretty effective.
Yes, actually, they, especially Dr. Huey Pak, he was a very accepted herbalist here in Butte. He served a lot of the miners, a lot of the politicians, the elites in Butte. He was their private herbalist who provided them with medicines for whatever their ailments were.
Okay. And were they the Chinese, were they pretty well accepted here in Butte as a subgroup, or?
Yes, there was discrimination, but not like it was in the rest of the country. There weren't mass running the Chinese out of town or murders or jailing them. They were pretty well accepted because they were providing services that were important to the community.
Well, yeah.
Food.
I would imagine the
laundry
laundry, after working in the mine, had to be pretty danged important.
Yeah. And a lot of the miners were single men who were living in boarding houses. They didn't have the means. They were renting one-room places to stay. They're making their money and sending it to families across the United States. The Chen family was making their money sending it back to homeland China to their families there to help them out because of the poverty that was going on and the opium wars and the corruption in the government. So they were a vital part of the community here.
Okay. This is neat.
We could step into the other room here.
Okay.
I spoke of the archaeological dig a few years ago. That took place across the street from us before they built the Emmett Community Center there. It was 2008. We had a grant and a team of archaeologists.
Archaeologists.
Thank you. Archaeologists were here, and
I'm glad I've never had a mind slip on the word. I stand there and stutter for.
And so they found about 65,000 artifacts. A lot of things
in that one lot over there.
In that one lot. A lot of things were pieces of pottery the size of your thumbnail, but here are some larger things that we have. Medicine bottles, perfume bottles.
Is that a dragon down there or a horseshoe?
That's a horseshoe.
Okay, it's got kind of a nostril looking thing on one end of it. It's all rusty and corroded and got buildup on it. But
they found that. And here's some larger items here, some vessels. And
an old key, a couple little perfume bottles, and wow.
And then over here there's doorknobs and hats and shoes and different things.
And all this stuff was just buried?
It was buried, yeah.
Wow.
So in that vacant lot across the street was part of Chinatown. So they were little wooden buildings where the Chinese families lived. There, in that lot to the south of us, in that vacant lot, parking lot to the west of us, in the lot right next to us is where they were housed.
So they had a Chinatown here?
Yeah, it was a Chinatown.
Okay.
Like a 6-block area around us.
Okay, and did the Chinese also live in other areas with their laundry, or did everybody bring their laundry down to Chinatown to get it done?
The laundries were kind of located where the need was. I talked about the boarding houses for the miners. They were closer to the mines, a few blocks away. That's where their laundry facilities were. There were a couple and then they lived in this part of town.
So they'd walk on up to their
laundry. Yeah, it was like
and
3-4 blocks away.
Oh, is that all?
Yeah, some of them.
Because I know we went to the Orphan Girl, and that's got to be
a
mile and a half away.
Oh yeah, the Orphan Girl.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, but most of the boarding houses for the miners were in this part of town because that's where the restaurants were. That's where they would buy their goods and services. That's where the bars were.
Okay.
Miners were.
Oh yeah.
After a hard day, a mile underground and it's being hot, you're pretty thirsty. So.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. And we've got another display here with
a silk screen that was actually displayed in the Chen's family room.
Okay. And then you've got a dragon.
We have a dragon. Every Chinese New Year, we have a Chinese New Year parade, and the dragon heads the parade. We wander through the uptown streets of Butte, blessing businesses for a small donation. Starts at the courthouse, ends up here at the museum. And the parade consists of the dragons, the dragon dancers, and anybody who wants to follow.
Really?
Yep. But last year we had about 450 people in the parade. It was huge.
Now, when's this parade? Is it the St. Patty's party or?
No, it is the for the Lunar New Year, the first full moon cycle of the new year, after the new year.
And when is that?
This year, I believe, is January 23rd.
Okay.
Is with the actual.
And so it's pretty much a Chinese-oriented parade?
It's an big Asian. Yeah.
Do you still have a big Asian community here in Butte?
We don't. We have a small Asian population now.
Okay. And how many men fit under, or people, I guess
It's a 12-person dragon.
A 12-person dragon.
Yep.
Wow. It looks like it's about 35 foot long.
Yeah, when it's stretched out to the full, it's probably close to that.
Huh. That is cool. And then you end up with a whole bunch of people just following it down through the streets.
Yeah, with noisemakers and firecrackers and just raising a little, I can say hell or not, but anyway.
Yeah, you can say whatever you want.
Yeah, having a good time. It's more of a social event. Chinese New Year in China is a reunion of the family. People travel for days and by train to their hometowns to celebrate the coming of the new year with their family. Lots of food and drink and stories, like we do here in the U.S. for our holidays.
Right.
But that's their big holiday, is that reunion of the family.
And of course, it's in the middle of winter. But
Yes.
usually we have Chinooks about that period of time, correct?
Last year it wasn't bad. It was it was 20 degrees, but a few years ago, standing on the steps of the courthouse doing the intro for the parade, it was minus 11.
Oh, so your breath was freezing and dropping to the ground as you were
It was really,
talking.
really cold. So it could be 45 degrees or minus 45 degrees. You never know at that time of the year.
Cool.
So, let's step through the doors here. This is the kitchen to the noodle parlor.
And this is the original kitchen?
The original kitchen. Yep.
And I ought to mention your tin plates on your ceiling. This is
original tin plates.
Really neat.
We have brand new skylights that through a grant were put in. We had a water issue with the membrane roof and the skylights, and so those have all been sealed. So it's protecting the contents of the building. We've worked through about $500,000 in grant money over the last 5-6 years with some restoration of the exterior and windows with UV glass in them, tempered glass for protection. You think that kind of money is a lot of money.
It goes fast.
It goes fast.
Especially with cost of construction materials right now. I mean, it's...
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
This is the cook stove, the brick cook stove. It was originally coal and wood fire. Eventually it was converted to natural gas at some point. The Chin boys had their morning chores. They were to bring the coal and the wood up the side stairs of the building into the kitchen, stoke the fire, get it going for the lunch service before they went to school. The Chin girls, their chores after school was getting the dining room ready for dinner service and dishes and things like that. So yeah.
Okay, let me describe this brick fire or this brick stove, because this is just unbelievable. It's probably 3 foot wide, 10 foot long, has several pipes. I'm assuming those are gas, or
yeah, that's what the conversion took place.
Gas after the wood and the coal, they started using the gas. But it's got it stands about 3 foot tall, and it has doors to be able to put your wood or your coal in, be able to heat this up. But the top itself is all tin that is fairly thick, and then they have woks that sit in the middle, and there's a place for 3 woks is what I see. Is there another wok station underneath that?
There is.
Okay, so there's enough room for 4 woks.
Mm-hmm.
And these woks are 2 foot in diameter, 2.5 foot in diameter. They're huge. And there's a spigot that comes on in over the top. I'm assuming that must be for oil?
For water.
Oh, for water.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was a water source. The old hot water heater's here in the corner.
Okay, and they've got a hot water heater that is heated with, it must be gas now.
Yeah.
Okay, and then they were able to add the hot water just by turning the spigot into their wok, because the hot water hose or pipe comes on over and sits over the top of the wok.
Yeah, because a lot of the vegetables they were cooking were steamed.
Steamed.
So they wanted that water, cover them, steam them.
Wow. This thing's just phenomenal to see.
So,
We'll have pictures of it posted on our Facebook page. We usually post about 10 pictures of the different museums.
Oh, cool.
We'll take a picture of this and and post it with our stuff.
So, and they made their own noodles. The noodle making machine is on its way back to us from the Historical Society in Helena. That's gonna
Really?
Yep.
And where did this sit? Kind of in the middle
Yep,
here?
kind of in the middle. You can see the ware on the floor.
Yeah.
Oh,
where,
yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know, the cooks were standing or people were prepping things, you know. Just
And this is a concrete
It's
floor,
a concrete floor.
but you can see where it's
Yeah.
been worn down an inch and a half where
Yeah.
they walked. Holy smokes, how many miles did they put on that?
a lot.
I've never really seen concrete wore down like that.
Yep.
That is interesting.
Well, if you go up to the Butte courthouse, the marble stairs going up from the atrium up to like the treasurer's office and the county attorney's office and stuff, those stairs have wear patterns in the middle of them where people, you know.
From walking up and down marble.
Marble, yeah.
Wow.
They just celebrated their 100-year anniversary 4 years ago, I think, the building of that courthouse. That's something you should just walk in and look at the atrium area, and
Okay.
it's really cool. It has murals of Jefferson and all the presidents, and it's all open through the center to the top, and lots of marble.
We'll have to go.
Red
We'll
marble.
have to go look at the courthouse.
Yeah.
And then this here's the ice box.
Yep, that's an ice box. This was the noodle drying room. An old-fashioned true ice box. My grandma called her refrigerator the ice box.
Yeah.
But they would cut ice blocks up in Elk Park, which is about 6 miles from here. In the wintertime, they had an ice house. They'd pack it in straw and haul it down to Butte to the restaurants and people, and all through the year.
And this is a commercial ice box.
This
I know
would
a
have
lot
been-
of people have seen the little ones that are
Right,
that
no,
are 2
it's-
foot wide. This thing's
Probably 7 by
7 by 8
By
and,
8.
and 3 feet deep.
Yeah.
So this is a huge ice box, and the door on it's probably 6 inches thick for the insulation.
Right, and the whole paneling.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that the ice would stay for a while.
Yep.
That's really cool too. And what was this little room in the back? Oh, that was the noodle room.
That's the noodle drying room. Yep.
Oh, they dry the noodles, so they weren't using like fresh rolled or whatever.
Well, they would make them and hang them. They wouldn't
Okay.
dry them like we get pasta now.
Right.
It wouldn't be dried like that, but in the preparation process of cooking them,
Okay.
they would hang them to dry. And so the picture you're looking at there is the noodle machine that's coming back to us.
Wow.
cool.
And it's a hand-operated noodle cutting machine.
Oh, yes. It has 2 big gear systems on it where they'd run the noodles through and slice them. And
That's neat.
Now, did they use mostly round noodles, or did they use different styles of noodles? You know, like the.
actually,
I'm not a noodle aficionado, so I won't even be able to tell you.
Did they hang them on hooks or on tables?
on racks.
Or racks?
Yeah, there were racks that were
Okay.
across here. Round noodles.
Round
Like
noodles.
soba noodles.
Okay.
Or the Japanese style. Modern
The
noodles,
udon
like the
or-
udon noodles.
Okay.
They look like that.
Okay. And the view out the front window is pretty neat too.
Oh, it
You get
is.
to see
Yeah.
the whole.
The Highland Mountains and the Butte Hill and down across the flats, the newer part of the city.
So this would be a great place to watch all of your neighbors in Chinatown, so you knew what exactly
What was going on? Right, right,
As long as you're in the mercantile, you might as well help out with the rumors.
right. I'm sure there's a little gossip going around here. So.
Wow. This is really nice, Dave.
And part of our mission is, people say, "Oh, it's old," but we want that history. We don't want to make it. We don't want to modernize it.
You don't want to sterilize it.
No, we want people to say, "Okay, this is what what it was like." So
And this was the dining room that we're standing in right now.
yes, and so each of these lights that hang from the ceiling and these markings on the wall, these would be private booths
Okay.
that you would sit in and have your noodles. Another project we're working on is restoring a wall of noodle booths. Probably next summer that will happen. We have the pieces and parts in the basement.
really?
So one of the board members and I, we're trying to figure out how to reconstruct this, but we have all the wainscoting in the booths and stuff. And so that's not going to take a day. That's probably going to take a summer or a winter.
Those projects always take a long time, and especially if you're trying, you're not coming into it with a modern look or a fresh
No, we want,
idea. You're
want
trying
to
to
look.
restore exactly what was here from old photographs,
Yep.
and trying to get that put together is a whole different game, I would think.
Yeah. And so it's like a giant puzzle. We're trying to put the boards together. They're different lengths because they were different heights, and finding the right sets, that fit together.
And I need to explain something else here. Dave has taken his time today to meet us here before the museum opened because he has a regular job.
I do.
So he's not just doing this stuff as part of his pay-for job. This must be somewhat of a labor of love.
It's a volunteer position. So, and it's been a great summer. We've had lots of tours. Our numbers are great. The gift shop sales are up. I have given, I don't know, probably 24 tours this summer. Yeah.
Inside there where it says do not enter, there's this big hood coming down from the ceiling.
So that's the original kitchen. So this was built first, and this was the
okay.
first noodle parlor.
Okay.
There was a fire, and we don't know when that happened. And so they closed it off and used
That area over there.
the Mai Wah side noodle parlor for the whole
okay.
restaurant.
Okay.
Yeah. There's some concerns with that we're trying to address with more grant money. More grant money, We don't have a huge annual budget. I would say we're flush, we're okay, but we're saving those dollars for matching grants. A lot of those are 3-to-1 match, 4-to-1 match. Sometimes you get a 5-to-1, which is a really good one. 5 for every dollar you put in, you get 5. We did receive it was through the National Trust. It was called the Partners in Preservation Grant, restoring old structures in historic communities. That was $168,000.
Wow.
Good one.
That was a good one. And that's actually led to other grants because now we have a national recognition. So we're using that to piggyback onto other grants, smaller ones. The sidewalk out front is a vaulted sidewalk. We didn't fill it in like a lot of people do. We left it a vaulted sidewalk, but that was $35,000.
Oh, wow.
Just to do that sidewalk, and it's all framed. Because you talk about the underground.
Right.
So there are storefronts under that sidewalk, and there's staircases leading down to those storefronts.
Okay.
And eventually that's another project. That's probably 10 years down the road, a decade from now, but we wanted to have those storefronts preserved so that we could use them as a future display. And
Oh, yeah. The underground tour thing, I think, is kind of taking off as a big deal.
Yeah, have you done the Butte Underground Tour?
No. I didn't know there was a Butte Underground
There
tour.
is. Butte Adventures, which is on Main Street, up the hill. They do the old speakeasies underground,
Right.
the old jail. It's a fun tour. My mom was here about 6 years ago, and her and I went on it, and she just thought, this is so cool.
Well, it is. They
Yeah.
had a whole city. We did the Astoria, Oregon, and then we did the Pendleton, Oregon, which is where the Chinatown was
Right.
a lot of the Chinatown was. And both of those were fascinating. And so we may have to do the Butte one.
Okay.
We were going to head to Deer Lodge and maybe hit the prison, but we may do the
Oh,
Butte.
the prison and the car museum.
We've already done podcasts at both of those.
Oh, you have? Oh, cool.
But the grandson hasn't had an opportunity to
you like
go
old-
into either one of those.
Do you like old cars? Yeah.
Yeah,
They have some old muscle cars and stuff that you'll love.
They got all
yeah.
yeah. It's a neat museum.
Model A's, Model T's, all the way
Right.
to Corvette Stingrays, from the 60s and 70s.
I have a car.
You have a car? You're not old enough to drive.
I know.
Tell them about your car.
It's a 1979 Cadillac Coupe de Ville.
A Coupe de Ville, 79? Cool.
I drive it in parades.
You drive it in parades? That's probably the safest place for you to be with that car.
Yeah, there aren't people on the sides.
Right. So, well, let's walk back down the stairs, and I'll take you into the exhibit hall, and we can explain some of those things.
Okay. Yeah, the underground tours have always been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I did the one in Seattle years ago,
Uh-huh.
and the tour guide said, "Oh, where?" Typical thing. Where's everybody from? And I said, "Oh, Butte, Montana." And he stopped his tracks and turned around and said, "They have a really unique underground tour." He had been on it, and I
wow.
really. And that's a fun tour in Seattle too. I enjoy that.
Well, it's amazing the way that that they went underground with so much stuff. And then they sealed it all off, you know,
Yeah.
in the 30s and 40s. And then now they're starting to bring some of it back.
We'll stop here. This is an herbalist office with the original case and some of the vials and so forth. And then religion was very important to the Chinese. They were Buddhists. There was a Joss house here in Butte, a religious temple. And we have the Guan Yu Buddha figure that was in the original Joss house.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Wow.
So,
Yeah, that's really neat. It's got a little temple with several. I'm guessing there's Buddha and
yes, and
I don't know what the other figurines are. It is probably the equivalent of a nativity scene.
Yeah, I never thought of it that way, but yeah.
then-
So the primary Buddha, and then the worshippers, and
Right.
the monks and so forth that took care of
Right.
the Buddhists in the temples and stuff.
And the little altar, and just it's a nice display. And the herbalist display is pretty cool too, because
Right,
those
with-
cabinets are really nice. They've got the cabinet doors on it, open up, and then there's lots of little drawers,
Little
for them
drawers,
to put
herbs
their
and
herbs
stuff.
in.
Yeah, that actually came from an herbalist shop a couple blocks up the hill from us. So that's not original. We inherit a lot of Butte Chinese history from other identities that were here. The Chen family they were kind of the last of the Chinese that were in Butte. In 1920, mining went from underground mining to
Right.
open pit mining. Less workers were needed, therefore population started to dwindle, and people were going elsewhere to make money. But during that time period, people were leaving. Oh, the Chen family, we'll give this to you. Hang on to it for the history. And so we've ended up with a lot of those things. Just we were a collection site.
Right.
You know.
Well, and that's what a museum's supposed to be.
Right.
But there aren't many Chinese museums around, are there?
There's more than you think. You kind of have to. There's one in San Francisco. There's the Southern California Chinese Association. So there's some in San Diego and LA.
But there were big Chinese populations there.
Yes, there were.
But as far as once you get off the West Coast or off the East Coast,
In the smaller
and
communities.
get into more of Central America, not Central America, but Central United States.
Mm-hmm.
We have not run into any on our travels, and not that we were necessarily looking for them either, but we do always look for museums. It's not.
So I've never been there. It's on my bucket list. In John Day, Oregon, there is the Wah Chong Tai Museum. It's a little community of about 6,000 people. There was a Chinese herbalist there. Similar story as us. When he was finished, they closed up his herbal office. And it was that way for 65 years. And so recently, well, I shouldn't say recently, probably in the last 20-ish years, they've established a state park there.
Okay.
And it's supposed to be the largest collection of herbal medicine in the United States.
Oh, really?
In John Day, Oregon.
John Day's a neat area too.
Yeah, and I've been in contact with them, and I'm just like, I have to come. I just have to go, because they're doing what we're doing. They're preserving it as it was.
Right. Well, and as long as you're there, there's a whole lot of cool things.
Oh
to
yeah,
see in
yeah.
Oregon.
I was on their chamber site and the Oregon tourist site. There's things in the areas that I would love to see.
Yeah, well, you're
And
not that far from
No.
the Oregon coast. You're only 2.5 hours or
Right.
3 hours from the Oregon coast. It's and there's all kinds of. There's so much stuff. We've done probably 10 podcasts in Oregon.
Lot.
There's a lot of neat stuff to see.
And there's a
But I'm gonna
Chinatown.
have to go. I'm gonna have to go to John Day now.
Yeah, John Day, definitely. I haven't been there yet, but maybe we'll meet up there someday. Give me a call.
Yeah.
We're headed that direction. Let's go.
Yeah. Well, and they do
So-
have a Chinatown in Portland.
Right.
Yeah.
And I've been there in the Chinatown in San Francisco and Seattle and Atlanta. There's one, what's it called, in New York City. It's the American Chinese Museum.
Okay.
And in Chicago, there's a big Chinese museum. In fact, in our exhibit hall, we have a very unique pair of Chinese shoes that have been shared around the country to other museums on museum loans because they're so
Oh,
rare.
really?
So
And they're just over here?
Yep,
So we're going to get to go see them?
Yep, we're gonna go see them.
How awesome is that?
We'll go into the exhibit hall. Our exhibit hall is more of a traditional museum setup. And it displays artifacts. It talks about the 1882 Exclusion Act.
And talk a little bit about the Exclusion Act.
So it was an act to basically prevent Chinese immigration. There was a fear Chinese laborers were going to take over American jobs or regional jobs. And so it limited the Chinese from owning mineral rights, owning property, for bringing families and wives, if you want to control your population, if you don't have your spouse here. And a lot of these Chinese men that came to work here were sending money home.
Right.
And that took place until, on the banner, I want to say it was 1910. That was enforced. And then there was, we talked earlier about the legal suits that went through the Montana Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court, giving the Chinese their rights in America. Because they were a vital part of that industrial revolution time. Minerals were being mined, the country was developing, roads were being built, railroads were being built. They were really an interesting part of that part of American history.
Right.
It's kind of swept under the table, but
there was a lot of the labor to do the infrastructure that we enjoy now.
Right.
Was done by the Chinese.
Yeah, they were laborers. They were hard workers.
And the thing that's interesting that I want to note is that the 14th Amendment was passed in what, 1865, 1870, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
The Chinese were not included. I mean, even the ones that were born here and citizens were not included in the rights that were extended to the blacks at that point in time.
Right.
The Chinese were still highly discriminated against.
Right. And if you look on the Exclusion Act here, so in 1885 in Rock Springs, Wyoming, there were Chinese miners that were killed and they torched their homes. Los Angeles in 1871, Hells Canyon, Oregon in 1869. Those were big riots, against the Chinese. That really didn't happen in Butte because they were very well accepted into the community. And it's believed because Butte was such a melting pot at the time.
Right.
We had the Irish, the Italians, the Slavics, the Finns, it was a huge melting pot. So it was an acceptance of it was a big multicultural city at the time. And so the Chinese were kind of just fit into that whole characteristic of the community.
Now, I've been to some other museums that showed all of the different nationalities that came into work. Mm-hmm. And they all divided into their own. You had Finntown, you had Swedentown, you had all of that stuff going on. Was that here also?
Oh, very much so. Here is a map of Butte.
Okay.
And all the ethnic communities of Butte.
Okay, so you got the Croatians, you got mixed ethnic over here, Serbians, the Swiss Italians, Cornish and Irish, Cornish. Yeah, so and the Italians, so they all kind of got into their own, and then they'd all go down the mine and all be best friends and then come out and they'd have to divide out into their communities. And so was there a lot of internationality fighting and contention in those communities, or did everybody just kind of get along, but you knew that if you wanted spaghetti, you went over to the Italian part of town, and sauerkraut, you went to the German part?
Right. Well, it was a huge melting pot. And like you said, the miners worked together in the mines. They were friends in the mines, and they were probably friends on the surface as well.
Okay.
They went to the bars and saloons together, I'm sure, afterwards. And yes, they went home to their families who were in the little communities in Butte, but there was still that connection. And they had community celebrations where everybody joined in. We 2 weeks ago just had the big Serbian festival at the Orthodox Church. I don't know how many attended. It was huge, but they had dance and music and the frescoes on the church, the Orthodox Church on Continental. Gentlemen came in and hand-painted frescoes on the ceiling. They're just gorgeous. Father Frank gave a speech on the history of the church and the history of the frescoes and cultural food. So it's a very cultural community. There were 9 noodle parlors in Butte.
Okay.
Everybody ate at the noodle parlors.
Cool.
And so there was all kinds of the Cornish pasties, the little
Right.
pie shell half pies filled with potatoes, onions, and beef. Those went down to the mines, but the Cornish and pasties are still an icon of Butte.
Okay.
There's pasty shops in Butte that serve traditional Cornish pasties and stuff. So.
Huh. I
And
need
then-
to spend more time in Butte. I really like Butte.
People say that all the time. They come back over in Butte for the day. They're like, we just can't do it all. We have to come back.
Yeah.
There's a lot to do. And so we have some pottery. We have cookware.
Now this pottery is not shards. This is complete stuff.
Yeah.
Upstairs in the diggings were a lot of
Right.
A lot of the
These are
shards.
things that were passed on through the Chen family and different Chinese families here in Butte.
And some cookware, some knives and ladles and a wok.
Cleavers.
Yeah.
Big old cleavers. We got some firecrackers.
Now are these original or 1800 stuff, or is this stuff you just brought in? The whistle, it says 1899 to 1940.
The
Those
whistle,
look old.
yeah. The firecrackers, I don't know. They may be something that was purchased to put in the display, but they do look pretty old.
They do look old. The lady finger size.
Yeah.
But the whistles are really cool because they're when you have a birthday party and you blow on the little thing and it uncurls
Yep.
and then curls back up. That's what these whistles are.
Or like New Year's Eve, the little
Yeah.
noisemakers and stuff.
Yeah.
We have some incense sticks. Here's an interesting story for your podcasters. So the Chinese had a game called, I always have to look at the name, Pakapu. So Pakapu was 64, just listen to what I'm saying,
Right.
64 Chinese characters on a piece of paper. You would pick so many characters, and there would be a nightly drawing of those characters. You'd buy into it, and then you would win different amounts of money on how many characters you selected.
Kind of like a bingo.
Kind of like a bingo. But the local politicians at the time didn't understand this game or what it was all about. It was a game of chance, a game of lottery. So they outlawed it and banned it. So the Chinese turned it into a numbers game, 1 through 64, which is the modern day Keno. That's
Okay.
played in Reno and Las Vegas.
Right.
And it's still here in Butte. You can play video Keno. But that came from the Chinese here in Butte, Montana.
Wow.
So,
Sounds like several things came from the Chinese.
oh yeah. And then we have some combs.
And you don't ever hear that history
No.
as far as where this game came from.
No, the history of Keno.
The Chinese history is really kind of hard to find, I think.
Yeah, unless you seek it out.
Right.
We have some combs and some tie buttons for dresses and things there. And these are the shoes I was talking to you about. They have a center heel in them.
A what?
A center heel in the shoe. So the ladies would walk on their arches.
Okay, explain this because I'm not understanding.
So the heel is not at the
okay.
back of the shoe. The heel is in the center of the shoe.
Okay. I need to
That-
explain these shoes. These shoes are like a size 7, let's say, and they've got the cloth outer wrapping that has all kinds of flowers and different designs on them. But the actual sole to the shoe, are they leather or they look to be hard? And
I don't know. I've never actually touched them.
okay, but they appear to be hard, but they're probably a thick leather.
I think leather.
And then instead of having the cowboy boot heel in the back so that your foot sits at an angle, they've got the center right in the middle of the shoe that comes down about an inch and a half and has a bottom on it, the heel part that's shaped just like a cowboy boot heel. It's about what, probably 2 inches in
Yeah.
diameter with the part flat in front, so it looks like a D when it's sitting on its side. But it's right in the middle of your arch.
Right.
How long could you stand on those things before you drive you absolutely nuts?
I don't know.
This
Yeah.
is insane.
You had to take little steps, I'm sure.
Oh, I'll bet.
Yeah.
And
Well-
just having too high of an arch in your shoe can bug the heck out
Yeah,
of
it'd
you.
be painful.
Wow.
So.
Did they also do like the Japanese did with the shrunken foot stuff?
Yeah, the binding of the feet.
The Chinese did that?
It was supposed to be delicate. It was supposed to be feminine, very feminine, have
Right.
small, tiny feet, and so they would bind their feet and break their toes and stuff, so they had small feet.
So that was a tradition with them also.
It was, I think, probably pretty prevalent throughout Asia during that time period. That would be,
I would have hated to have been a woman 100 years ago.
well, women were...
I wouldn't want to be a woman now either.
Right.
I'm not playing that game.
But unfortunately, women were second-class citizens and servants to the males of the family, and as throughout history, that has been a common thread.
But wouldn't it be nice to have a servant that had feet that she could cook longer on?
Yeah, that she could. Yeah, be more productive there.
Instead of having broken feet that you couldn't stand on or walk or anything else, it seems like the ability of somebody to be able to function in life would be so hindered by having your feet messed up.
Yeah.
So, yeah, aren't those cool? And so those get shipped all over the nation.
They've been, to the Chinese American Museum in New York and Chicago.
Are these your particular items?
They're ours. All right.
Okay.
So
that is cool that you got something like that here.
So we have some very unique things here. I need to be headed back to work soon, but I'm happy to answer any questions you might have in the next 5 minutes.
Let's just go ahead and shut this down.
Okay.
You've pretty much showed us what you have here, correct? And we've covered quite a bit of history. I'm sure that there's another month's worth or so.
Oh, I could spend a week with you and tell you all the inside stories.
But
you just got the surface.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But it gives people an idea of what you've got and some of the history. And if they want to research more, they sure can do that.
Yeah. A lot of our attendance this summer to the museum has come through Google search.
Okay.
People Google us.
And so you got a website.
We have a website, maiwah.org is
and
our
that's
website.
Spelled M-A-I-W-A-H. W-A-H. Or you can look up Chinese Museum in Butte because that's the way I found it.
Right.
You have a Facebook page.
There's a Facebook page also. It's on that website. One of our board members is really handy with social media and getting information out. He worked really hard last winter to push a bunch of things out through Google and different platforms, so that I think that's really driven some of our attendance this summer. Plus, COVID subsiding and people getting out and doing more things. Unfortunately, the floods of Yellowstone, I think, has helped us too, because parts of that were closed for a while and people were looking for things to do. They already had booked their plans for the area.
Right.
Our local chamber is really great to promote all the museums in Butte. The Mining Museum, the Clark Museum, the Clark Art Chateau, the Mai Wah, the Piccadilly Car Museum or Transportation Museum.
Right.
So it's not just us. There's other things to do.
No. And we did a podcast, well, 2 of them up at the Mining Museum yesterday.
Yeah.
So anyway, I so appreciate your time, Dave.
Yeah.
Taking the extra time when I know you've got another job and you've got so many other irons in the fire. You're a busy man. But I finish out my podcast by saying the world is full of wonder. People need to get out and explore. There's a lot of history you don't know anything about, and these museums have it. And people like Dave spend so much time concentrating on this stuff and trying to bring that history to life, and it's here in the museum. And everybody have an absolutely wonder-filled day.
All the roll and go, where am I to go? Meet Johnny, where am I to go? For I'm a young and a sailor lad, and where am I to go?